Colnago has a new gravel bike, the Made in Italy C68. It's very pretty, it's very expensive, and it's very fun to ride. I got to spend a full 2 days riding the bike on 2 different wheel sets in San Diego with longtime Colnago engineer Davide Fumagalli. And in this video, I'll tell you about what's new with the bike, how it compares to other bikes on the market, what it's like to ride, and just as critically, in my humble opinion, the stories of people and place behind this bike and this brand. Normally bike reviews are a buffet of lists. We're talking about spec, this part, that part, weights, claims, comparisons of head tube angles. And if you want to jump straight to that, you can do so using the menu tabs below. But for this, I thought I would start with some stories of time and place. From Europe to Asia to the Middle East, Colnago now finds itself in an interesting space in time. Founded in 1954 by Ernesto Colnago in Cambiago, Italy, the brand is now owned by the royal family of the United Arab Emirates. Why? Because the Crown Prince loves cycling. You've probably seen the UAE World Tour team, which boasts the likes of former Tour de France winner Tadej Pogacar. And now the royal family has a bike brand to go along with its team. Road bike racing is certainly nothing new to Colnago. That was its whole heritage. It's steeped in the stories of champions. The statistics are something like 62 world championships won on a Colnago, 14 grand tours won on 33 monuments, and on and on and on. There's no shortage of cycling heritage with this brand. The last time I visited Colnago, we went to the headquarters in Cambiago. There's a museum there on site with scores of fascinating bicycles, and directly across the street is Ernesto's house. And at the time, in his basement, there was carbon fiber manufacturing going on down there. Now, like so much of the cycling industry, many of the bikes are made in Asia. The C series, however, is still made in Italy with a tube and lug format. Despite the change in ownership and the jump to Abu Dhabi, Colnago still leans heavily into Italian cycling culture, and understandably so. Riding road bikes and gravel bikes in Italy can be incredible. I've ridden with Davide on some big days out in the Dolomites. I was on a 3T at the time. I think he was on a Colnago cross bike. This was a few years ago. I've also ridden with some of his coworkers up and around Lake Como area, which is where he grew up. It's pretty spectacular riding, and buying into the emotions of Italian cycling is an effective strategy. In addition to Davide's engineering going into the bike, there's also a bit of his childhood memories etched into the chainstay protector.
That's a famous mountain in my area. It's called Monte Resegone, which is a very characteristic saw blade profile mountain above Lecco, close to Lake Como, above the Lake Como. That's the mountain that I was seeing from my room when I was a child. Just looking outside every morning, I was seeing this mountain. And when we started doing this new project, we wanted to include a bit of Italy in the bike as well, because this bike is designed and produced in Italy, so we are proud of that. And so we included this little touch. Remembering when I was a kid and I was looking at the mountain and just was dreaming going up there. I just like riding, being that road riding, mountain biking, gravel, downhill, track riding. I just like riding, and lately I'm doing a lot of gravel riding because you can do almost anything with those bikes. You can go from road to mountain bike trails, as we did yesterday. Plenty of opportunities out there, so you're not limited to one place only. So yeah.
So we've talked Cambiago, we've talked Abu Dhabi, now let's talk San Diego. This was the first time Colnago did a bike launch outside of Europe, and San Diego was the place. A number of journalists and myself were invited for a few days of riding the bike and talking to the Colnago folks, who were quick to point out that while this is but the second gravel bike from the brand, building drop bar bikes for riding off-road is nothing new to the Italian brand. For instance, this bike on hand goes back to the 70s. Single rings ain't necessarily a new thing, kids. They also brought to San Diego this prestige cross bike that a certain Sven Nys used for 3 World Championship wins. Okay, enough yapping with the story time. Let's talk about the bike. C, V, and G are the letters. G is the gravel race bike, the G3X, with Lauren Dicker Shinzo winning Unbound Gravel 200 on this machine. V is the road racing series, and C is this balance of performance and compliance, and denotes the fact that it's made by hand in Cambiago. Compared to that G3X, the C68, a little bit shorter, a little bit taller, a little bit slacker. You know, head tube is in the 70.5 range for most sizes. That's certainly on the slacker end. For instance, Specialized Crux, Giant Revolt, BMC Caius are in the 72 head tube range for most bikes. There are slacker bikes for sure. The new Santa Cruz Stigmata, now in its 4th iteration, is 69.5 in many sizes, and the Argonaut GR3, 68.5. This bike comes in 5 sizes, which for Colnago is a bit of a departure. Once upon a time, they had a single road bike that came in 22 sizes. There were 11 different sizes, you know, often centimeter by centimeter, and then they offered 2 different head tube heights. So in effect, they had 22 sizes on offer. Not the way many people want to run a business in terms of keeping track of SKUs. So now you've got 5 sizes with the seat post making up for most of the small changes in between. And then you've got, yes, the integrated cockpit that we've been seeing on an increasing number of bikes. This is a slightly new version, CC01. We've seen from Colnago before. The CC01 wide is 40 at the hoods and 46 in the drops. 40 isn't that wide, you might be saying to yourself. It's all a matter of perspective. It comes in lengths from 80 to 120 millimeters, a little bit on the longer side for modern gravel bikes. Davide's goal with this bike was an all-around excellent gravel bike, a little more stable, shallower, slacker, and more comfortable than the current gravel race bike, the G3X.
You're not limited to racing. It's still a fast bike, geometry-wise, and for about stiffness and responsiveness of the bike. So it's a fast bike, but it's not designed to be a performance bike. It's not designed to win races. It's designed to be able to enjoy more the time you spent on the bike.
And there is no longer a cyclocross bike in Colnago's range. Will that change in the future? We shall see. But for now, there are 2 gravel bikes, 0 cyclocross bikes. Want to talk price? Sit down first. Ready? You ready for it? $7,100, not for the bicycle, for the frame set. In America, that is all that is being sold, and then your local high-end retailer can build this up into a bike if you don't want to do it at home. In Europe and in other markets, there is a SRAM Force bicycle, a SRAM Red bike, and then a Shimano GRX bike. The SRAM Red bike would go for 13,000 US and is being sold for 12,000 euros. The Force bike, $9,600 or 8,700 euros. And then the Shimano GRX bike with rapid red fulcrum wheels, 7,300 euros, just shy of $8,000. But again, in the US, this is only coming as a frame set for the low price of $7,100. Colnago may have a few points of weakness, but it's in no danger of being called a budget bike. How does this thing ride? Let's talk about a few things. Let's talk about how tire size affects geo and handling. Let's talk about how cockpits that are fixed affect your perception of handling. Let's talk about Davide's goals with the bike, and then my take on the bike after riding and crashing this thing in San Diego. Now I've brought this home to ride around here in Colorado. Start with tire size, which is always a big thing. Davide's take is that one bike can't be perfectly specialized in all the things. You can't have a bicycle that's a great track bike and a great downhill bike and a great road bike. You can ride a bike wherever you like, but if you want it to be specialized, it's not going to be specialized at all the things. And his take, which I agree with to some degree, is that for gravel, you can't have a bike that can fit like a 50 mil tire and handle well, and then also put on road wheels and road tires and have it handle well, you know, on the pavement.
The bike is designed around 42 millimeter tires. So the geometry are optimized on around that type of size. Gravel bikes are crazy good for many different situations. I know many people that are putting wide slick tires on the gravel bikes, like 32, 35 slick tires, and people are also putting like big volume tires, sometimes on some bikes even up to 47 and 50 millimeters. The problem is if you design a geometry optimized for one section, so one diameter of tire size, it's not going to be very good for the opposite. So when we designed this one, we wanted to center the geometry and the optimization of the bike around the 40-42. So the bike is still good for smaller sizes like 35, 30, 38, even 32 on the road. It's already on the limit. But if you want to have a bike that rides well with bigger tires, there are some other compromise you have to accept. And so that's why the tire clearance on this bike is actually limited to 45. And we didn't want to go much bigger than that for this reason.
Tire size affects the bike in a few ways. One, a giant tire is going to mean you're probably going to have to scoot the rear hub out to make room for it, even if you drop the chainstays, and a longer chainstay typically means a slightly slower feeling bike in terms of handling. It also affects your bottom bracket, right? The bigger the tire, the lower a frame will be designed for, and that goes to Davide's point, in that if you design something for a whole lot of tire and then you put on a skinny little tire, all of a sudden you could be hitting your pedals through corners, as the bottom bracket can't be designed for all the things all at once. Up front, got a 70.5 head tube, certainly on the more stable end of things. When things get choppy, it's arguably better to have a little more forgiving front end. That's not to say this is foolproof. I, as a fool, tested this and managed to put the bicycle on the floor on day one. And Davide was like, "What are you doing to my bike, Ben?" We were going down a rather choppy road section where I was paying attention. Okay, don't fall down, don't fall down. Made it through that. And then got onto a smoother section and came around, hit a bit of grass that was wet. And luckily, I had my camera on Davide's seat post, and it caught me in all my glory, fumbling and tumbling. Another thing learned from that experience, aside from the fact that you should always be paying attention, is that the bike, as of now, does not yet have the UDH from SRAM, the Universal Derailleur Hanger. It's got a traditional derailleur hanger, which can and does bend when you dump the bicycle down at speed on the drive side. So we've got a new derailleur hanger there. Shifting's good as new. Colnago says that the UDH will be coming on subsequent models in the year 2024, just not on this initial batch. Another piece of handling, the handlebar handling. The wide bar, 40 centimeters across all sizes, and then you can get different stem lengths. A few hours into our first ride, Davide says, "Hey, what's your first impressions of the bike?" I'm like, "Well, it feels a little more upright than I'm accustomed to, because I can't adjust the stack and reach like you could a traditional old school bar and stem." Shape of the bar is generally good. I like the flare. I think that's generally been accepted as a good thing for gravel bikes. It's not crazy flared out, and it starts underneath the hood clamp, so the levers are still relatively straight up and down. As far as the bar shape, yeah, it looks sweet. It's got a bit of an edge top and bottom on the back, which you may like, you may dislike. Again, you can adjust for length, but not for width. In terms of ride feel, it's pretty cozy. A fair amount of that, I would assume, we can attribute to the post and the layup. I asked Davide how he tests bikes mechanically. A couple traditional ways to test for compliance, aka comfort, is to load up the saddle and see how much flex you get in the system. And a way to test efficiency is to put weight on effectively the pedal spindle and see how much the bottom bracket moves. Davide says, yeah, you can do those two measurements, but those are pretty rudimentary, and that it's not like when you're riding outside, the force is just straight up and down and your pedaling force is just at one angle. But he tests in a few different ways, didn't necessarily specify what those ways were, but says it's a dynamic thing, and building a bike for comfort here is a priority. I can't quantify my feelings of comfort, but it's certainly a noticeably softer ride than a straight ahead gravel race bike. Are we slicing things too finely of a gravel comfort bike and a gravel race bike and a gravel backpacking bike and an all-around gravel bike? Yes, probably. And of course, you could race this thing if you feel comfortable racing a $15,000 or euro machine. But as with all bikes, the successful formula depends on you finding a machine where the designer's intention aligns with where you live and how you like to ride. So if you just love riding gravel bikes, a little bit of pavement, a little bit of dirt, and you're not concerned with being Mr. or Mrs. Racy McRacer Pants all the time, then an all-around gravel bike is a good thing. Does that mean you have to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars? No. So yeah, the Colnago C68 Gravel is a fun bike to ride. Pretty comfortable, pretty stable, pretty. Like all high-end luxury bikes, it's not like there's a one-to-one linear increase in dollars spent versus ride quality gained. And in part, what you are buying when you invest in a high-end luxury machine is what the brand evokes for you. Some of what Colnago evokes is its past. Some of what it evokes is racing, past and present. How much does Tade's influence have on your experience riding a gravel bike? I don't know, but Davide's experience testing, modeling, creating bikes for many racers over the years, getting their feedback, that's not nothing. I do enjoy riding bikes with the people who make the bikes in different places because place so largely informs what good is, right? I say this all the time with tires when people ask me, hey, what's the best tire? What's the best tire? It's like, well, where do you live and how do you like to ride? Because what works well in one place will work terribly in another. So it was interesting for me to ride with Davide in San Diego after riding with him in Europe. Also, it's a cultural thing as well about what cool is in terms of look as well as feel. I also appreciate hearing some of the more subtle things, like Davide talks about how he's got a different saddle on each of his bikes, so that gives him a different pressure point and in his mind gives him relief as he moves from one bike to the other. Often I've heard engineers wanting to have the exact same saddle in the exact same spot from bike to bike, so that was just an interesting tidbit that I picked up. It's not in any of the website materials on any of the bikes he creates, but just a little insight into his thinking on what a good bike should be. So now back here at home, I'll spend some more time on this machine and we'll follow up with a more detailed review down the road. Just wanted to give you my initial thoughts. And for the record, Davide also put his bicycle on the floor the second day of testing out there in San Diego. We're all human, we're all having fun. So those are my initial impressions on the brand new Colnago C68 Gravel. Now that I've got the bike here at home, I'll be riding it some more on more familiar roads and trails and put it in the mix for other upcoming videos. Will it make the cut for the best gravel bikes of 2024? We shall see. Let me know what questions you have in the comments and I will do my best to answer them. Okay, let's weigh this thing. This is with Zip 33S and SRAM Force group set. Feedback scale says 8.27 kilos, 18.23 pounds with cages, without pedals. So continuing the fine Colnago tradition of not being the lightest bicycle in the shed. Davide, if you were here, would say, hey, we're not trying to win the weight winning contest, we're trying to build a bike that is a pleasure to ride. And yes, garage is getting closer, every day getting a little closer. Once it's nearly dialed, I'll do a video on what I did, what failed, what I like, and what you could do if you're trying to step up the garage game. In the meantime, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and take a look at what this Coffee Ride sweatshirt says on the back, people. That's what I'm talking about.